Okay, with luck, this should be going live in a couple minutes for you guys. Well, not minutes, but seconds because of the lovely delay. Alrighty, hello everyone. As you can see, I have kind of a different setup here going. I have finally gotten my hands on OBS. Had a lot of fun playing around with it the other day to get things figured out. So this is the first time I've actually been able to pull off the two screens. So we have camera on me, camera on this beauty. So what's gonna happen tonight? Oh, I'm glad you like the ears, Lefty. Thank you very much. I like them too. They're fun. But you're gonna see these a lot when I play on online games too. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing? Yeah, and let's see. So we also have Jeff sitting in there. He's got the power, so behave yourselves. And who else? There's Dave in there, so it's good to see you guys stopping by. But this is a game that I picked up from my friendly local game store. And it's one of those things where I was just wandering through to see what he had available, and I saw this, and it was sitting right next to Labyrinth, and for me, I would have bought Labyrinth, but my husband loves the Dark Crystal, and it was one of those things where I wanted to get a hold of this sucker because it just looked really cool, and it had that whole nostalgia factor to it, and we just, this past weekend, had a chance to sit down and actually play it. And it's one of those games where it's sort of like that hybrid concept. It's almost like someone took Candyland and Monopoly and Dungeons and Dragons and kind of mixed it all together. And I know that sounds super weird, but as we got the feel of it, it definitely works, and it's definitely a fun game. The thing that I really do like about this game to get us started is that the box itself is like ridiculous quality. It's this nice thick cardboard. It has like that finish on it. I don't know if you can hear that texture. This is very ASMR. But it has this texture on it, so it's really, really well made, really well presented. So this is the cover of the box, and it is just beautiful. You get the stills from the movie of each of the characters that are in here, and this is the important thing. You do need at least 2 players for this game because there is sort of a team effort factor involved in it. However, you have 4 players, then each player would get one of the characters, and you have the option of working with the other characters. So it's got a little bit of flexibility to it. And what I wanted to do tonight is just take this apart, show you all the bits and pieces, and then if you have any questions as we're going along, please, by all means, put it into the chat. I want to make sure I'm able to sit these and answer for you, because when I put pictures up of this on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, I was getting a lot of messages asking all these different questions, which is why I figured, you know what, let's just do a live stream. That way you can sit right there and you can absolutely ask away. So let me get the lid off the box. So here we go. This is what you're going to see inside once you get the lid off. Let me put the lid over here. Keep it safe. Alright, so you get this box, and the box itself, it has this nice velvety texture to it. Again, there's a lot of quality factors that have been put into this, and I think it's because they really do know that it's a nostalgia thing for us, and it's you know, people buying it going like, I love that movie growing up as a kid. But this is the game booklet, and basically explains everything there is to know about how you're going to play this game. So when you take a look inside, it kind of gives you a brief rundown on how this is going to work out. And it's a sizable booklet. It's not one of those things where it's just 4 pages and, you know, good luck to you. Oh yeah, the miniatures. Ooh, the miniatures. You're going to get to see an up close and personal of each of these miniatures because they are gorgeous. This is the other thing I like. They make sure that in this booklet you see all the pieces you should have in the game. This is something I wish we had when we were looking at our Mice and Mystics, because we missed somehow one of the cockroaches was not in there as one of our minis, but you know, we just quickly printed something out and we were fine. Oh, let's see, Dimitri says he picked up Labyrinth. Oh, see, Labyrinth is like, seriously, that's like up there, way up there for me. Please, I can't wait to get it game, especially because of the minis. So that's on my list of hopefully I'll get it soon. But the thing that I really appreciated with this book as well is that the booklet itself, let's see if autofocus is going to work with me. There we go. The booklet itself is also just really quality print. They didn't skimp out at all in terms of the inks or anything like that. This is actually good. This kind of gives you an idea of what the game board itself looks like. And this is where I said it's kind of like a combination of Monopoly and Candyland, because you see these faint rectangles, and it's these rectangles that you move along in the game. And what happens is you'll put down these cards that you see right here. Each card has a different performance and what's going to happen and how it affects the game. So as you get these cards, you will then put the cards down, and sometimes the cards will stay, sometimes the cards might go back in the pile, but as these cards collect, there are things you have to do just like you would have to do with a Monopoly game. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea of it. But the other thing that factors in is that, going back to here, as you can see here, each of the characters, oh, behave yourself. Each of the characters do get a card that has dice that you have to use for rolling to make your moves. So you have things like speed, you have things like wit, which is kind of like wisdom, and then you also have brawn, which is basically kind of strength and constitution thrown together. So you have those cards in there as well. And then we'll just keep going through this booklet because it's just beautiful. These are some of the other game pieces that come into play as well. I'm actually going to show you a close-up of this one, but this is sort of the extra player, because what happens is you have a set limit of how many rounds the game goes, which is good because this game really can't persist past a certain time. So you're not sitting there playing it for hours and hours on end and not getting anywhere. So this actually will be the first thing that moves in the first round, because you have to rotate it down a number, and then there's an order of operations as to which character gets to go first and how everything works out. So like I said, it's a really interesting blend. You have the attack factors of rolling dice like you would with Dungeons and Dragons and other similar games, but then you have the fact you have to move around the board and you have to use these cards like you would with Candyland and also with Monopoly. The one little thing I would mention is you only get one set of dice, as you can see right here. So these are, it's basically a classic set of dice. Problem being is that when you have characters, or not characters, but players who need to roll at the same time, it's one rolls, the other waits. So what I would recommend is, if you do get this, make sure you have dice sets for every player, which it really is not that hard. If you want to keep it color-coded as to how they have it here, it could definitely be helpful, because the instruction cards for each character has it color-coded as to what happens with them. So that's just one little hiccup I did discover with the game itself. And I do have autofocus going on, just because trying to fix that and talk about this at the same time, too much of a headache. So here is, this is called the Agra. And this is that main piece I was telling you about, and it's beautiful. So you can see up here, there are numbers, and you actually want to start, am I going the right direction? 11, yeah. So you start all the way at the top, which I believe is 23, okay? So it starts you up at 23, and as you make each turn, you basically just turn the card, but the cool thing is, as you turn this card, you get this neat celestial image that shows up on the other side. And again, this is the first thing that moves for each round. You spin it down a number count. If this gets to the end before either you get the crystal shard back to the crystal, or if the Skeksis win, and I might slip up and say Sexies because someone was joking about that, now that's stuck in my head, but if the Skeksis win, then this is sort of like a beat the clock for both sides. So the good guys and the bad guys have to make sure they either win the game or lose the game before this gets down to 1. So that's an interesting gameplay element, and it helps kind of limit how long the game itself will go, which, when, yes, you're playing with kids, is helpful, because it was helping them keep a little focus, like, okay, we only have these many rounds left. And for us, it was also knowing, okay, well, we have this much time to work with, and where we could fit it in here and there. A round itself can take anywhere between, depending on your players, and if you actually have more dice, a round itself could probably take maybe about 5 minutes. The other thing that might come into play is that if you decide to work together, so if the Skeksis and if the Gelflings decide to work together, there is some back and forth conversation. So ultimately, the game can run anywhere between maybe 20 minutes, especially if you get a bad card, probably up to about an hour, hour and a half-ish type of concept. So for those of you wanting to know how long it takes, that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I really liked about this booklet is it puts in stills from the movie. So this is one of those things that you're sitting there and you're reading through it and you're just getting this gorgeous eye candy. And this is the whole explaining how you begin and how you get things going. You do have willpower. Consider your willpower like your hit points in Dungeons and Dragons. You can actually earn extra willpower, or you can lose willpower in place of having a certain move happen. So that's another thing to consider. And they do recommend how you can get the whole game board set up. This is completely optional. We ended up sitting 2 across from each other, so it was actually 2 people here and 2 people there. But they do try to really guide you through how this whole thing's going to work. And then this is what I was talking about with the game turns, how it's sort of an order of operations and how everything is supposed to work. So the augur, like I said, that's the first thing that goes because you have to turn it down. Then you have the chamberlains go. Now here's where it gets interesting. What you actually have to do, the very first thing you do with the game is you have your 2 Skeksis battle it off. Basically they have to do a dice roll off, and whoever rolls the highest, that's the Skeksis that gets the chamberlain's roll. So that could vary depending on what happens. Then you move on to Jen, and then the Gartham Master, and then Kira. Kira always is the last one to go. I played Kira, and that got to be a little interesting because I actually got stuck with a card in our last game where the fates were not with me because I had to roll a d8 against a d20 for a wit check, and it was not happening. So here we have, it's explaining how everything's done, and this breaks down, this is what I like, it does explain how the character sheets are supposed to look and what you're supposed to do with them. And moving on, it gives you the information about using your will and how you can lose it, how you can gain it back. It is specific to each character, so that is something to keep in mind. You can also opt to rest, which basically means for your turn, you are just going to sit there on your square or your rectangle and rest to get a willpower coin back. Now, let's see what else we have going on here. So really, it's a very thorough explanation. We did find a couple little hiccups, like there were a couple points where we weren't sure what to roll for the attack of some of the minions, for the Garthams. So because we weren't sure about that, we just kind of winged it. We're like, okay, we'll give them a, a 6-sided dice for theirs. But it's a really thorough book, and it's one of those things where I do recommend whomever's kind of gonna be the one running the game, read through this first just to make sure you have everything in order. It is going to feel familiar once you get the hang of it. It definitely is a good idea to do sort of a practice run game first with all your players too. Let's see what else we have in here. Oh, if you have Fizzgig, you actually get a bump to your dice. So for your, what was it? Yeah, I think it was speed, that you get a little bump to your dice because of him. And then it just explains the whole thing. And again, it's just the details they have in this are really, really gorgeous. And it's one of those games where, for the parents especially, or the people who are playing this who are children of the 80s, you're gonna love just seeing everything out in front of you. So this is the instruction booklet, really thorough, really handy. Like I said, there were just a couple little things we noticed missing, something we just basically have to go online and just double check and see if we can find the answer. So all right, so now we have Das Minis, because these guys are gorgeous. And here we go. Oh, come on, please behave. So there we go. So these are definitely going to be getting painted. You're gonna play nice to me and not, camera. And I can't wait, because with each of the minis you do get, make sure I'm grabbing the right guy. Yep, you get their character cards, and the character cards are super detailed. So basically I'm going to be using this to help me in terms of how I want to paint him. But yeah, the details are definitely, oh, they are, let's just say I'm salivating, because this is the kind of mini that has the nooks and crannies to it, the texture of the fabric, even the facial detail is amazing. And I am hard pressed to find mold lines. There's a little bit on the base of one of them, I did see that, but these minis are great. And rumor has it that there are minis that may have been produced further back that you could possibly get your hands on eBay. That is up to you if you want to get more of the varying characters. But this is a cool thing. So you'll get this character sheet, you'll get your mini, and they just go hand in hand. So this is, they say this guy's the Chamberlain, but again, you can also have that roll off and see which one really gets that. Let's see here. Yeah, I agree, Lefty. All minis should be that way. Sometimes you look out, sometimes not so much. But the price of the game, I will say, definitely reflects the quality of what you get. I think I got this for about $50 at my game store. And yes, you can probably find it cheaper online. One thing I was a little hesitant of was someone said they saw it on sale for $15. That concerned me, because I was actually wondering if it was not a used game for that price, because the cheapest, the absolute cheapest I've seen it was about $35 on Amazon for like one of their Blitz things. So let's see, who else do we have next? Let me get his card out. Okay, so we have Second. right? Trying to remember how we pronounce that one. So here's his card. Again, I mean, this is going to be sitting next to me as I'm painting because it shows you all those great details. And you can see here what his dice are. He only gets 3 willpower things, but again, if he takes a rest, he could earn an extra one. And let's see if we can do this for him. And again, we have the... Nope, that's too much. Play nice. This is where autofocus, of course, was working about a half hour ago. Now, not so much. Let me try taking the business away. Negatively. Aha, there we go. Alright, so here, I mean, it's just all those folds in that fabric. And just those little details, which, I mean, what I'll do is I'm going to take, like, actual pictures of these, and I'll put them on my Crafting Muse Facebook page. That'll make it easier for everyone to be able to see it publicly, because I put it into the Facebook group. It's not going to be seen by everyone. But yeah, the details on these minis, ridiculous. Okay, now we have Jen. Jen is also very cool. So here's his card. Again, you get all of his stats and everything. And he's the one character who does start, this is, I was painting earlier, sorry. This is his willpower. He actually starts off with more willpower than anybody else. So he's going to be the more desirable one that everyone wants to play. Heads up with that one. And then here we have his mini. Come on, you. You gonna play nice or you gonna be mean to me? Yeah. Hold on. There we go. Or not. But there we are. But as you can see, like, look at the back of his cloak. It's just, oh, all those lovely folds. And yes, as Lefty's saying, you can repurpose these. We did put these up against, where's my dwarf? Here's my dwarf. So we did, well, I did. So I put these guys up against a dwarf. So look at this. I mean, they're pretty close in height to each other. You have to factor out the base, because the base is a little bit taller. But, I mean, pretty close. So you could very easily put these guys in a game however you want to. And scale-wise, they will work out nicely. And then finally, she's my favorite. She's always been my favorite just because she got those wings too. You have Kira. So here's her card, which, I mean, I fell in love with this because it has like all those details, like the strand in her hair, the folds in her cloak and the wings and everything like that. So this is, again, really nice. She also has a little bit more. She has 4 points of willpower as opposed to 3 as the Skeksis do. And then this is her. Oop, let's do this one. This is her mini. Oh, see? There we go. And she has her hood up in this mini, so you can have some fun with doing it that way. But the minis, let's get down to it. The minis are wonderful. I'm absolutely gushing over them. And along with those stat cards, each one does get sort of a special card that can be used at any time in the game, but once you use it, it's done. So it's things like Maddening Whimper. So basically, once per game, you can discard this card to roll an extra d20 for a failed wit test without using points, like one of your, what was it, willpower points. So this is something you can kind of use as an exchange to improve a move if you've had a pretty bad roll, which I'm sure none of us could relate to. Kira gets wings, and this is something that helps her with a speed test. Same thing, you roll a d20. And then we have the Gelfling Pipe. This is for Jen specifically. Once per game, you can discard it, and it's for the failed wit test, so you can do your roll 20 and try and save it without losing things. You have some Red Bull, but it gives you wings. Yeah, you could try that method, Jeff, and see how that works. Hey, Scotty, how are you doing? And then here we have this last one. It is the Gartham Master, and it's, you know, for him it's his brawn, so his brawn is the d20 option. So you may find you have an opportunity as to when you want to use this for your character. And again, we want to talk about these characters. If you have 2 people playing, basically what I would recommend doing is good guys versus bad guys. So one person would play the 2 bad guys, the other person would play the 2 good guys, because otherwise it gets kind of muddled that way. The interesting thing that was happening with our first go around is that even though my husband and my oldest were the Skeksis, my oldest didn't want to play nice, and he actually wanted to be the one to just go after it and win the game. He actually got kind of cutthroat, which was interesting to see. He got into the whole bad guy role, so future DM in the making, I'm thinking. So these are their special, specific character cards, and then, let me see here, can I do this without breaking them all apart? And then what happens is, doo-doo-doo-doo, hold on. You get special cards for each of the characters. So these are the Skeksis cards. Again, they almost look like tarot decks. They're just beautifully detailed. Hi, Anna. How you doing? And this, again, just kind of gives you some extra little motions and rolls and that kind of thing when you pull one of these. And they're specific towards bad guys or good guys. I'm just going to use that term to keep it a little bit more clear as to what's happening. The other thing that happens is... there's just so many of these, and they're so gorgeous. I mean, really, if you get this game, you have to look, because they make a point of, you just get all these scenes from the movie put on the back of these cards. I'm not kidding. Like, I kind of just sat there and stared at it for a little bit, just because of how well printed. And the cards themselves are nice. The card stock, they have that texture to them, so they're not super slippery. The quality of this game is the one thing I am super jazzed about. So this is where the minion cards come into play, and this is also where you're moving into now just basically cardboard paper stand-ups. So let me get those pulled out. So here we go. We have these are a little harder. There we go. So you have these guys, and what happens is they have their own base, and you pop them on the base, and there you go. And they'll move around the thing like this. So this becomes the option where, if you are going to get this game, and I don't know if you have access to 3D printers, or if you can find these printed out, you could opt to start enhancing your game with this. So really the only 4 minis you get are the 2 Skeksis, Kira, and Jen. Alright, everything else is going to be one of these deals. So you have, how many of these guys? You have 1, 2, 3. Really, it was only, oh, it's 4. Yeah, so you get all of these guys. These guys can actually start doing some serious damage, especially because what happens is as the Skeksis move around, if they land on a card with these guys, they can then start moving as their own independent group. So not only do you then have to battle the Skeksis if you're a Gelfling, you have to battle one of these dudes too, and that's kind of how I died. So keep that in mind as you're playing. Like I said, there's some options for teamwork and making things work to your advantage. So you have these dudes. Then the Chamberlain, he gets this nifty card. It's, you know, just to show off he's the big important man. So you get that going. Here's the Shard. So basically what happens is, whoops, with the Gelflings, the whole point in the beginning is you first have to try and get the Shard, and depending on what card you pull and what the card is telling you to do on the space on which you landed, you might get an option to catch, or not catch, but to gain the Shard. That's what happened to me. So I pulled up something and it says if you roll successfully, you'll get the Shard. So of course I'm trying to get the Shard, because for the Gelflings, this is how the game moves along for them. For the Skeksis, it's basically just kill the other guys. So unfortunately my rolls were not doing well that day. How tall are the Garth? That's a good question. They are about, let me get my ruler. 1 second, I'm gonna go a screen. They are, oh, they're actually pretty sizable. They are almost, yeah, they're like 4 inches to the money, 4 inches tall. And then they are, yeah, so basically they're like 4 by 4. So they're a good size. I'll leave that there in case any more questions about how big they are. And here are the tokens that are definitely used throughout the game. All these little guys. And here's Fizzgig! Not that I'm partial to him or anything like that. But he's actually a helpful little dude. If you have him in your possession, what happens is he antes up one of the dice for you. So you're able to use, like, say one of your dice is a D6 for your, what was it, for your brawn. So if you have a D6 brawn and you have him as your companion, you can then move up to a D8 for your brawn rolls. So he's not only just cute, but he's also, he's helpful. All right, so this is one of the ones where I'm like, I get to start with him. So yeah, the little girl in me totally came out for that one. We have the crystal already done, and then you have a few other characters that you can meet along the way. So it's a really, I'm going to show these all at the same time. This is a really interesting game. It's an interesting combination of things. Like I said, definitely make sure you're sitting there and you're reading through the booklet first, because it'll help to have someone kind of wise to the idea of how this is supposed to pan out. But everything has a base that's like this. Well, not the circle one, but everything has a base so that you can place these around the board as well as you're going along. And the kids got a huge kick out of playing it. And it was, for me, definitely a huge walk down memory lane. This is one of those things that's akin to, like, you know, you remember watching The Goonies, you remember watching Labyrinth, you remember watching Willow, and all those other things. So it kind of, it gets that nice little, makes everyone feel like a kid moment in a way. So let me see here. All right, so we had all of these cards that I just explained in terms of, like, this is how you get the minions on the board for the Skeksis. And which one is this? This is the, oh yeah, this is like their, this is their side of the deck. So let me start putting these over here. I'm running out of desk space. All right, so basically, like I said, there are cards that go on to, did these get mixed up? No, that's a separate thing. That's the other thing. That's why I'm getting confused. So you basically get these cards, these are it, that go on to the board, and they start giving you a role as to what you should be doing with working with all of these. Yeah, Willow. Definitely Willow, Kevin. So like this one, if you were to pull this one and in your spot on the square, which the game board itself is huge, so for me I can't exactly spread that out and have it in focus. So let me flip back to here. Alright, so you see how I have all these squares? Say you landed here. You have to draw a card. I drew the card. It's called Rot Fungi. And it's a test versus, it's a test of wit versus a d10. So you have to take your wit die and you have to also roll a d10. If your roll is higher than the d10, it's considered a success. And basically this card does not go on the game board. Instead it goes back into the pile, tucked in the bottom, that type of thing. However, if you don't succeed, each of these has a different failure factor to it. So for this one, you would lose 1 WP coin, and if you are in a group, you also become waylaid, which means the Emperor can decide which direction you can go. So your opposing players can be like, haha, sucks for you, you have to go this way now. So that's one of the ones. Let's see what else they had in here. Let me see if I can find the one that just really, like, oh boy, that was not a good one to get. But they have things in here. We have slave podlings, and that's where these guys come out. All right, so when this card gets pulled, these guys come out. And then there is the young Nebri. Again, this is one where if you succeed against the roll against a d6 to your brawn, it actually has a variation for characters. So for Jen, he'd lose one WP. Kira, she's fine. She doesn't lose anything. She just doesn't get to proceed. Yeah, like I said, it really is, Lefty. It's like this mixture of Candyland, Monopoly, and D&D. It was the weirdest thing, but once I started getting it into that mentality, I was like, ah, okay, all right, cool. So yeah, it just has really cool things. And again, it's just, I could probably just sit here and like show you every single card and just how absolutely gorgeous these are. You know, the funny thing was, we were done playing, and oh, I have to go and buy that reminder to self. It's one of those things where you kind of wanted to go back and watch the game again. So you know, you got the murky waters and the slave podlings camp. So it definitely, it nods to the various things that happen in the movie as well. I mean, you got the Landstriders. So really all these become potential for, if you wanted to, you could create minis to match what happens with some of these cards. Not all of them involve a mini, but some of them do. So if you really wanted to kind of turn this into a thing, you could. The other thing is, if you're feeling so ambitious, is you could feasibly take this game board and create terrain, if you wanted to, for each of the areas that are on this board. So, you know, for the crafters out there, it has a lot of potential. So that's really the essence of how this game works. And it's just, you know, it's one of those things where we enjoyed playing it. We'll probably play it again. Depending on how you play it will depend on how long it goes. Because, you know, the one Skeksis was out to get us. It actually worked to their advantage because he was able to get a couple of, you know, Garthams with him, and away they went. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend buying this game. I would absolutely say get your hand on the minis, and if you're comfortable painting minis, paint up the minis, because these character cards that they give you, there's no reason why you can't paint these up to look like how they look in the movie and everything like that. So huge fan of this already, and you know, I'm looking forward to playing it again, especially now that we're starting to get a better hang of it and everything in that respect. So, oh, you're very welcome for sharing. Like I said, there were so many questions that people had about this, and you know, what was in there, how does it work, and so on and so forth. I thought it'd be easier for everyone to actually see the bits and pieces. Now I am going to try and get out the game board itself, and it's not a poster game board. That was the other thing that I was absolutely thrilled about. Yes, I like the elf ears too, and I can blame DM Scotty for them because he posted them one day and I had to buy them. So back to this game board. It is not the paper poster stuff, or the thicker version of paper poster that you sometimes get in more traditional games these days. It's a very thick board, which I was thrilled about. And oh, it's big. It basically would cover my table. So I think it's 2 by 2, and right now, considering, you know, computer equipment and everything, so what I want to do is kind of like, I'll do a little sweeping so you can see. I mean, it's just, you could almost frame this. That's how detailed they are about it. Like, they didn't chintz out and kind of blur the edges. This is stunning, and I'm sitting there and we're playing, and I admittedly was getting lost at looking at this, just in like remembering and, you know, thinking about the different scenes in the movie. So this is the upper half I'm showing you right now as best I can. So, and this is going into the other side, and here are these little silhouettes are representing of, you know, if you fail one of those card activities, you have to put it right here and keep it there, and then that means everybody who lands there has to do it, which is fun. Okay, so here we have the bottom corner here, which again is just, I'm just amazed at how much they put into this. It's definitely for what you're getting and the price of everything. I find it worth it. I don't think it was cheapened. I don't think it was, whoops, just lost a mini, unreasonable or anything like that. This, I think you're getting quality, and because of that quality, you are getting a game that is going to hold up for a very long time and through very many plays. And you can also get creative with it by painting your minis, by bringing in other minis to fit the place of certain characters and everything like that. Yeah, Lefty, definitely it's a lot of great inspiration for the characters. I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say I haven't been thinking about it, let's put it that way. So alright, let's see, do you guys have any specific questions or want to see something closer or anything like that? Because I'm more than happy to sit here and do that with you guys. Because this was the whole point. It's like, okay, I have it here right in front of me and I can take it apart and show you more things if you so choose. So if you have any, I do have the chat. I can see the chat. Oh, I gotta put the minis back too. Let's not lose these guys. And oh, in terms, that was the other thing about the minis. They actually have some heft to them. Like, they're not lightweight. They're not the type of thing where they're hollow and they're cheap inside. These are solid minis. Definitely high quality. Very high quality. Where is my elven bow? In the garage. You think I'm kidding? We actually do have a bow in the garage with a quiver full of some old arrows. Let's see here. Enough about my ears and my bows. Anything about the game? Okay, I think that is all the pieces back in. Yeah. So if this is what you had hoped to see, I am thrilled that this worked out for you guys and you got to get the closer look at it. Again, I would just, yeah, I know you're being funny, Lefty, I got it. This is one of those things where I do encourage you to check out your local game store because, well, at least with mine, oftentimes he will have, sorry, there's a cat who's like wandering down out of screen. was making an odd noise. Surprise. He actually will purposely keep any game he has in store open. So you can look at the game first, take it apart, and get a feel for everything. He even will let you sit there and play the game if you want to before purchasing. He's a pretty cool guy, let's put it that way. So again, after playing it, really my biggest criticism was the fact that there's only one set of dice. So I would get each player a set of dice, and it's completely up to you if you want to keep it color-coded, which may be helpful because on the character sheets they do, where's one? They do have it so that it's more coded to color than so much as to shape. You know, because here they're D8s. Well, it looks kind of like a D4 too. So that's really my only big heads up. I would honestly have more dice, and I think that was my biggest. Oh, and it definitely can't be a one-player game unless you're really good at being evil against yourself. So at least 2 players. At least 2 players. You could feasibly work it with 3 because one person could play both the Skeksis. 4 is your ideal number. So that's it. Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I've stopped in a couple times and we'll chat about things, and it's cute. His son is, I think he said he's 16, and this summer he's been running his own D&D sessions at the game store, so people have been able to go in, I hope, and play and everything like that. I have just been so crazy this summer. I haven't had a chance to even go in and check it out. Let's see here. Lefty says I think they should have at least put 2 dice. Yeah, really, that's honestly what drew the game out longer, because it's like I had to roll against someone and they also had the D8, so it's like, well, let me roll the D8, and of course, like, you're across the table from each other, so you kind of try and loft it their way without throwing it off the table to save time. But definitely more than one set, and you'll probably be happier for it in the long run, just so it has a smoother transition between everything. So yeah, that really was my biggest bugaboo, and even that you could work through. It was just a matter of figuring things out. The other thing we did do is for those trial cards is oftentimes you had to roll a d20 against one of your own dice. So we just had it where the player who had to make the roll rolled both the dice at the same time. We didn't have it where someone else rolled the one dice. It was just fast to be like, okay, you do it. What did you get? That's kind of the better way of running it, rather than be like, okay, well, who's gonna roll against so-and-so? Just have the player roll the 2, because then it can't even up for debate. It's like, no, you rolled both the dice. You either failed or you succeeded. So that's a little tip I would put in for that one. All right, well, thanks for stopping by, Lefty. I'm very glad that this was helpful for you. And if anyone else has any questions, please, type it right in, because I will be happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, any other homebrew rules? Well, honestly, you probably could tweak this as you want to, in terms of how you want to do it. Once you get a feel for the game, I mean, it's your game. You have it at your house. You have the freedom to kind of bend the rules as you want to. But these are just the things we noticed as we were playing. It probably would be helpful to have people who are, of the same good guy, bad guy sitting next to each other. That was the other thing, because we were kind of across the table from each other, so it was harder to interact quickly. And let's see, are the podlings similar? Let's take a look. That's actually a good question. Are the podlings similar to the geflings? I said halflings. Freudian slip. Let's see. Come on, buddy. Slightly shorter, I would say. Not the exact same height. I mean, the cardboard cutout, yes. The image, no. So that's your answer for that. They're not exactly the same size. They're slightly more condensed. So there is that. You guys are very welcome for this. I'm happy to have done it. I'm glad it was something that caught a lot of people's attention and they wanted to find out more, because this is one of those cool games where I had actually assumed this was something people knew about because it's the Dark Crystal. But I guess not, because it was getting a really good reception on all the, the Twitter account, the Instagram account, Facebook. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool game. It's a cool game, a little bit of a learning curve as you're figuring out the do's and don'ts and the rules and everything. But again, as long as one person has made a point to read it through a little bit more thoroughly, it will help. All right, bye, Scotty. Thanks for stopping by. All right, anyone else in terms of pieces in the game or, you know, nuances of the game? Because you got me for a little bit longer. I'm willing to stay until about 9:30, and then I gotta call it quits because we had an early morning because we're trying to get back into the groove of school before school actually kicks into gear. God help me. So, all right. Do we have anywhere? No. I'm gonna get another minute just to see. But honestly, like if I start getting other cool games like this, I think what I will do is make a point of doing live streams like this so you guys can see what's happening with it. Does the Great Conjunction play into game? Yes. We didn't get that far. Basically, if one of the Gelflings dies, game over, and I died. But yeah, it does. It's basically, it follows the concept of the movie itself. We just did not get to that lovely bit. So yeah. But it's pretty darn thorough, and this booklet has it all explained out for you as well. That's a good question, though. Very good question. Maybe we'll get to that point. Maybe I'll actually survive. We'll see. You're very welcome. Like I said, it's a cool game, and I'm jazzed to share it with you. Actually, let me put this underneath so it doesn't keep getting warped. So, all right. I'm thinking we're good. I'm thinking it's grand. Thank you everyone who stopped by to take a look and come and see and had the questions and everything like that. Again, please check your local game store first. Yes, it is on Amazon. I checked. Amazon does have it. The prices will shift around, and what I'll do is after this is done, I'll make sure there's a link for that in my description. And yes, you can find it elsewhere for cheaper. The thing that made me nervous about the really cheap ones is I think those are the used games or something's wrong with them, because it was just, the pricing did not make a lot of sense. So if it looks like a really good deal, it just might be too good to be true. So just kind of keep that in mind. So that is it for me. I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and I'll see you on the flip side on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and there is going to be another crafting video coming up on Friday, so I'm going to try and get that pulled together tomorrow for everyone. So take care, and I'll see you later. Bye! Bye-bye.